Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in our Meet the Ventures series for the BLUP 2020 cohort. Today, we're here with Ritam, founder of Callisto. So, to start us off, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Ritam?
Yeah, so my name is Ritam. I spent the majority of my high school years in California. I've moved around like 7 times, so I've really been around the place all over the US. And right now, I'm a rising sophomore at Brown, class of 2023, and I'm an intended medical engineering and reproductive healthcare major. It's an independent concentration I'm hoping to make.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Callisto?
Yeah, so Callisto is a web app platform for sexual assault survivors and domestic violence survivors. So it basically has like two main components. It's a resource matching component and a shelter matching component. So it addresses a need in the market that when someone is sexually assaulted or a survivor of domestic violence, when they go into hospitals or shelters to report whatever heinous incident happened to them, it's really difficult getting matched with proper resources that you qualify for because there are hundreds of like links and phone numbers out there, and you don't qualify for a lot of resources out there. And on the converse side, there are obscure grants held by the government that survivors are eligible for up to thousands of dollars of aid for both medical and legal expenditures, but they don't even hear about it. So the resource matching platform kind of hopes to address this through like a TurboTax like platform where survivors are asked basic intuitive questions, they get matched with resources just for them. And the shelter matching component tries to address the need that when survivors are looking for shelters to relocate from an abuser at home, it's really challenging for them because they they're told that they have to call each of the shelters in their area individually 4 to 5 times each every day. And in Rhode Island alone, we have 6 shelters. So that's like 25, 30 calls you have to make a day. And obviously, because a lot of them are like single working mothers and they have like they're working multiple part-time jobs, that's near impossible. So the shelter matching component hopes to kind of automate that need away and make it in a platform similar to like the common application where you have a one-time like 10 question survey and then that gets sent out to all the shelters who contact you directly.
Well, that sounds like such a noble pursuit. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about when you knew you wanted to start your own venture?
So I'm a sexual assault advocate right now with Day One, and what that means is that whenever there's a survivor of sexual assault or domestic abuse, I'm one of the first people that comes in that meets them at the shelter, the hospital, and my role is kind of to match them with as many resources as possible, like legal aid, medical aid, help them through any sexual assault kit testing, give them emotional support. And I saw through a lot of the people and survivors that I worked with that these were two glaring issues, that a lot of them had trouble kind of getting matched with the proper financial aid that they needed and getting into proper shelters to escape their abusers. And I thought, there might be a better way to do it and thought of Calypso.
Well, it's great that you're already in this space and trying to solve this problem, which you have seen seemingly multiple times, I guess. So, tell me a little bit more about your target market.
So our target market are the survivors of domestic abuse and sexual abuse. So it's kind of um, I would frame it as a tiered kind of target market because we have two subsections of survivors. So we have survivors who are at home who maybe don't want to report or are too hesitant to report that they can access the app confidentially through their own phone. They don't have to rely on anyone else. And then we have survivors that might not know about the app that go to the hospitals, go to the shelters to report. And then we have a network of shelters and sexual assault advocacy centers that we're trying to work with would then recommend the platform to the survivors to help them go and get matched with the proper resources without having to rely on anyone else or without having to risk, not qualifying for a grant.
Of course not. I'm glad that you're working towards solving that issue. So, who or what inspires you in your startup?
I would say like it has to do a bit with the previous question you asked with how did I come up with the idea. Honestly, just kind of seeing like when you work with a lot of these survivors, you see the situations that they're in. You see how they're honestly like they're just very average people. They're hardworking mothers. They're a lot of them are younger age, like teenage age, like young 20s, and you see just the passion and the sincerity behind them coming in, them just wanting a safer place to stay, them wanting to support their children, and it's a very instinctual response of it just feels unjust that they aren't able to get a safe place to live away from an abuser. It just seems unjust that they just can't get the money to afford medical treatment or counseling or therapy for their kids who witnessed assault, and it just it's something I care about deeply, and that always it serves as a good intrinsic motivator whenever I want to work on
Well, you are clearly a very good hearted person with a really noble pursuit. So tell me, what are you working on right
it.
now?
Yeah. So right now, the two things we're working on is firstly the development of the actual platform. So we're still looking for interns to help code the back end and the front end. We have some interns right now that are helping on the UX design and the front end as we speak. And we're also working on building our network with existing shelters and sexual assault advocacy centers. So we're trying to work with some people there's a national coalition against domestic violence that works with a lot of shelters in several states in the nation. So we're trying to get in touch with them, and we're trying to work with them to be in as many shelters as possible so we can really create an impact.
And what is something surprising that has happened so far?
Yeah, I think one thing that really surprised me is that when I initially kind of started on the project, I was compiling just compiling all the resources out there for survivors. Honestly, I expected it to be like maybe like a 20-30 minute thing, maybe like an hour thing of finding listing out all the resources for survivors. But it turned into a massive project, so it turned into like 5-6 hours, and I kind of saw all these like I saw multiple government grants that personally I didn't even know existed, tons of resources for survivors that were undocumented immigrants that didn't speak English, that were either deaf or blind. So I was definitely surprised by the huge the abundance of just resources out there, most of which I wasn't even aware of. And I think a lot of survivors and advocates too aren't aware of them either. So hopefully bringing these resources to the forefront and getting them out to the people that really need it would be something that's possible within the next year or so for us.
Well, that is certainly very surprising. And how did B Lab help you achieve success and progress for your venture?
I think one thing that, and Jason will probably be very happy that I said this, but one thing B Lab emphasizes a lot is like bottom up research and really understanding the market that you seek to operate in. And when I was initially going into Callisto, the idea was a little different. I had multiple functionalities that I wanted for it, and I had a vision based on, I guess, a subjective reality that I had experienced as an advocate. But actually going in and doing bottom up research, having tons of interviews with shelters, executives at sexual assault advocacy centers, even interviews with advocates and survivors. I kind of realized the necessity for the shelter matching component, which is something I didn't even think of to begin with, and the necessity for certain functions in the resource matching component, which again I would have never seen. So that was incredibly helpful, and also the mentorship network in B-Lab I'd say is near unparalleled. BMAX, so many Brown alumni that have led successful ventures that have been where you are, right there in your footsteps, that can help you based on where you are in your journey or can connect you with the right people is pivotal.
Well, it's great to know that Brown has such a supportive network. So, before we move on to our final question, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah. I guess to anyone listening to this interview, we are always just looking for new interns to help us expand to more states, help us be in as many shelters and sexual assault advocacy nonprofits as we can, so we can maximize the amount of people that can benefit from this resource. So if anyone wants to help out, we would love your support, we would love your time. So please reach out to me. I'm guessing my email will be in the description or something, but that'd be absolutely amazing.
Yes, it will. And if you're listening to this right now and you want to contact Retam, feel free to send him an email with the address attached below. So, just for as a final question, what is the latest TV show you have been binge watching during quarantine?
um, I've been, I've been, let's see, I've been watching. No, I watch like Netflix and stuff like that, like not like TV shows. I'm a huge fan of like How I Met Your Mother. I've been kind of rewatching that a lot. It's been interesting because I used to watch it a lot as a kid when I was like in eighth grade. And I didn't know how like dating and relationships and all that work. So I have like a newfound appreciation for watching it in college.
Well, How I Met Your Mother is an amazing TV show and one of the classics. Well, anyways, thank you so much for meeting with me today, Retam, and I hope to see you soon in the B Lab 2020 showcase in September. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope I'll see you all next week.